Hi, this is Kim Broadway from the University of Florida, and today I'm going to show you the basics of cymbal crashes. So for a moment, I want to talk a little bit about the instrument, and these are Sabian Synergy cymbals. So you're going to have two of these, needless to say, with leather straps, no wooden handles, no metal anywhere touching the cymbal. The goal is to make sure your hand touches the cymbal as little as possible. So you want to wrap your hand through the straps. Again, that is good for marching percussion situations, but not for concert situations. And also, again, if you have an ability to lay these out flat on a soft surface, a carpeted surface, this to me is much better than some of the cymbal cradles that are out there that sometimes make a lot of noise when you're playing the crash. So the first thing is, you're going to want to make sure that you realize your cymbals aren't exactly matched in pitch. One of them will be slightly higher in pitch than the other one usually. And for me, without going into great detail, I put the one that is slightly higher in pitch in my dominant or moving hand. You see, one of your hands is going to move more than the other. So there are two words you should remember whenever playing cymbal crashes: angle and velocity. You want to make sure that the angle of the cymbals is correct as they're coming together, and you want to use the proper velocity as they're coming together to get a great sound. Now sometimes we'll take a moment and play this on the floor to get used to it, to get an idea of where that angle should be. We're trying to avoid getting any kind of air pocket in the cymbal, any kind of vacuum lock. So sometimes putting it on a soft surface on the floor, getting used to this, and I'll do it at a distance here. You probably won't be able to hear it too well. Realize that as this edge hits, you will not catch an air pocket in there. Next thing is, for those of you who are right-handed, your left-hand cymbal will not move nearly as much. And at first, I don't really recommend having the weaker hand move at all. Now, there are a couple of basic approaches to cymbal crashes. Some people do crashes that are primarily vertical in nature, where their cymbals are in this position towards the ground. Some people do crashes that are primarily horizontal in nature. And again, I use a combination of the two, but most of my crashes tend to be more of the horizontal nature. I tend to let gravity help my dominant hand as it comes downward. And in slow motion, you see how I'm setting the angle with my left hand and letting my right hand come down at much less of an angle. So again, if you had to define this, maybe that's about 15 degrees. If you're around 45, that's much, much too much. But the closer you get to no angle, especially on a louder crash, the more likely you are to get a bad sound. So normally I like to get the cymbal vibrating just a little bit. I usually tap the moving cymbal on my knee a little. Then in slow motion, as I bring the cymbals together, you'll find that this leading edge will strike just off center, and then the rest of the cymbal will come together. So if I do it very slowly, I never really want to hit edge to edge, again showing you that, and I never want to hit flat to flat. So in slow motion, you're going to hear two sounds. If you know your snare drum, you're going to hear this almost like a flam. Again, this is in slow motion. And you hear those two sounds. That shows you that you're not going to get an air pocket when you're playing the cymbals. Now, as you get faster with the velocity, again, there's that word again, then the angle will feel like it's changing. It really is not, but as the cymbals come faster together, you're going to find that that flame gets minimized. So I'm going to start moving in slow motion and then get a little bit faster. So you'll hear some crashes with the flam, then you'll start hearing this with less of the flam. And you can see the angle hasn't changed, but the velocity makes that flam almost imperceptible. Now I'm going to step back from the mic a little bit and let the crashes become a little bit louder so you can hear them. And it takes some practice. Many times we have to be prepared for one crash in a piece of music, and we don't get a chance to play 10 crashes to practice in the piece of music. So we have to spend some time with these instruments. They're heavy, they're not a whole lot of fun to hold. Again, to remind you the way I hold the cymbal, I want to make sure that I'm holding it with as little contact as possible. Again, my knuckles might be touching the dome of the cymbal, but I don't want to have my hand wrapped around this bell of the cymbal. This is really around the dome. This is really going to take away a lot of the overtones. Now, if I need a really loud crash, sometimes I'll let the cymbals hang after I play the crash. So I might do something like this. Now my body doesn't touch the cymbals at all, and that way they can ring for a long period of time. If I decide to do something more of a vertical approach to a crash, I have to decide, am I going to go up with the crash? Am I going to come down with the crash? Coming down gives you that idea that gravity helps you, but it certainly is a little harder to control. If you're new to playing cymbals, I don't usually recommend practicing that at first. Coming up, it's usually easy to control the angle, but you've got to work against gravity a little bit. So I always recommend people try all these different crash approaches. A few other elements you'll need in a basic cymbal crash. Okay, again, this is my standard crash position, primarily horizontal. As I get softer though, what you're going to find is if I keep that angle the same, you're always going to hear two sounds because of the velocity involved. So for my softer crashes, I tend to hold it more vertically. I tend to hold it right in front of my eyes almost, and I just offset the cymbals just enough where I know I'm not going to catch that air pocket. So now, at this very soft crash, I don't need much angle at all. I almost come straight in. And as I get louder, I'll get more and more towards my vertical approach and add the angle in. Now you notice a couple of times I muffled the cymbal against my body. For short crashes, I've got to make sure that I can find a spot where I can muffle where I'm not going to hit any buttons, anything on my uniform, anything on my jacket. So for these crashes, I need to often just get it as close to my body as possible, kind of hold it sideways so you can see that, and muffle them very rapidly. So again, it is not uncommon in our cymbal playing to do things like this, where we're almost taking this technique I just told you and having to minimize it in fast motion. So I recommend for every cymbal player, as you're starting out, spend a lot of time playing long crashes, meaning just a lot of time in between them. Make sure you can do 10 of those in a row that sound almost identical or as identical as possible. Spend a lot of time playing soft crashes because we do this a lot in march repertoire. And then spend a lot of time playing crashes and choking them off to make sure we can do this. And finally, make sure before you play any crashes that your straps are tied correctly. You don't want this cymbal to come flying down and make a loud noise during a rehearsal or a concert for sure. So I hope this has been helpful to you. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me, kbroadway@arts.ufl.edu. Thank you for watching.